Breaking news tonight, 2016 Democrat presidential candidate and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton says she opposes the Keystone XL pipeline because she doesn't believe it's in the best interest of what we should be doing to combat climate change. Even though her own State Department had a report that said the Keystone XL pipeline is environmentally sound. Good evening and welcome to 630 Point of View. I'm Chris Berg. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, in tonight's top story, history was made earlier today when Pope Francis landed on U.S. soil for the very first time as being Pope for himself. And interestingly enough, he landed here on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year for Jewish people. Now, he's scheduled to meet with President Obama tomorrow morning and to speak to Congress on Thursday. It is being reported that one of the items he will talk about with Congress, climate change. So earlier today, I visited with the executive director of the North Dakota Catholic Conference, Mr. Christopher Dodson, who's actually in D.C. for the Pope's arrival. Christopher joins us live from Washington, D.C. A lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement. Christopher, thanks so much for joining us. Let's jump right in here. Obviously, the Pope first visit the United States. He's speaking in front of Congress on Thursday. I'm not sure if you've seen actually his speech yet or not, but whether you have or not, what do you anticipate him to say to Congress on Thursday?
I'm sure no one has seen his speech but himself, and even if it is finished or not. But I think we need to keep in mind whatever he says is going to be rooted in Catholic teaching and the gospel. That's what he's here for. People will find political implications. There will be political implications. People will twist it here and there. But he will be speaking as the Pope, both at Congress and at the event at the South Lawn of the White House before he moves on to New York and then Philadelphia. So
what I heard this morning, and again, maybe no one has seen these words, but I was under the impression that one of these reporters knew some people that had seen the speech. They mentioned, obviously, one of the key things he's going to be discussing is climate change. You just mentioned, hey, he's going to be focused on Catholic teachings. I think that's one of the things that people are questioning about this Pope. Where does climate change fit into Catholic teachings?
Look, everything about ourselves as Catholics, about the Christian faith, touches upon everything else, including how we run our businesses, how we relate to our families, how we engage in society, and how we vote, how we act in politics, and how we care for creation. So really nothing is outside of the touch of our faith in Jesus Christ. And that means the climate, it means life issues, it means how we treat the poor, and so on. Now, there may be differences of opinions on how to do those things, but nothing is outside our faith. And that's why it's important for the Pope and the bishops to call attention to various issues, including climate change. Now, a lot has been made about what the Pope has said about climate change. If you actually read the encyclical, it's a long encyclical, very long, and only a few paragraphs are about climate change, only a few. It's really about how we as Christians relate to the environment, that gift of creation that God gave us. And it's not new. It's something that's been in Catholic teaching for a long time. In fact, we can go back to St. Francis. So it's not new, but what he's doing is calling new attention to the urgent need to find out more and react appropriately. And he's not even recommending specific plans. That's not what the Pope is doing. What he's doing is basically calling attention to who we are as human persons and our relation to creation. So with regards to that issue, and I think it'll just be one issue he'll probably bring up. I'm sure he will talk about immigration and the family, religious liberty. I'd be very surprised if he didn't bring up those issues.
Let's talk about immigration for a moment. Obviously, the big conversation as well about displaced persons and the refugee situation happening over in Europe. Back in July, there was a piece where the Pope came out and basically called Americans racist and xenophobes, at least their attitudes, because of the immigration situation taking place on the U.S.-Mexican border. And yet, as a report of September 6th, the Vatican's going to take in 2 of the refugees out of the situation in the Middle East. It just, to me, doesn't feel consistent when you're going to label Americans with those kind of attitudes and then take in 2 families. What's your comment on that?
A lot of times what you see with this Pope is when he says something, it gets twisted around. He didn't call Americans racist or xenophobes, though racism and xenophobia, along with other legitimate concerns, are reasons why sometimes people oppose immigration reform or accepting refugees. And when we're talking about refugees and immigrants, we're talking about two different things in the law, both international law and American law. But what he's calling us to do is have an open heart, an open mind, because these are the people most in need. Jesus was a refugee. Joseph and Mary running to Egypt. These are people who are in desperate need and have a right as a person created in the image of God to flee persecution and find a better life.
And I guess that's my question then, and just for accuracy here, this is July 15th, 2014, the Washington Post. He went on to say many of their rights are violated. They are obliged to separate from their families and unfortunately continue to be subject of racist and xenophobic attitudes. So was he misquoted there? Or?
No, what you said was incorrect. He didn't call Americans xenophobic and racist.
Right, so their attitudes.
No matter where we are in the world, there are people who are xenophobic and racist. And that seeps into politics. Now, there are legitimate reasons to protect our borders, to make sure that people who come here are not, terrorists. We need security and peace and so on. Those are legitimate reasons. But there are always people who build upon those fears for racist and xenophobic reasons. And I think he was referring to that fact that happens. He didn't label everybody that way.
Then that leads to what I was trying to allude to earlier, is that, so you know how much money the Vatican Bank has got. I mean, it's a lot more than I can probably put a number on. So as of September 6th, the Vatican was going to house 2 refugee families from the situation in the Middle East and Europe. To label people's attitudes as xenophobic and racist, shouldn't the Vatican be doing more, in your opinion?
Well, have you been to Vatican City? It's not a very large place, and it only has 1 parish, and it's a very small parish. So 2 families that's a large population for Vatican City.
Well, we got 60 million people that are being displaced. So anyways, yeah. in relationship, obviously not very
But the point was, he was able to do something, and again, that's just the country of the Holy See, not the church. And he's calling on the church overall to do what they can. And I know that I recently heard the bishops of the United States are discussing this. What else can we do? For the Syrian refugees alone, what Obama first suggested, 10,000, I believe?
Yes.
And that's, 200 people per each state. That's, not a big number for the wealthiest country in the world. And these are people who are fleeing persecution by definition.
And yesterday you talked about security. Germany actually arrested a young man that was an asylum seeker that was also an ISIS recruiter. And I think that's the challenge and the balance. But I don't want to move on to this, and I've only got a minute.
It is a challenge, and I think it's one in Catholic teaching we recognize, the right to secure borders while recognizing the rights of persons as well.
Let's talk about the most.
It has to always be balanced.
And I've only got a minute left, sir, and I apologize. I feel like I could talk to you the entire show. But I guess at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is this is a huge thing, obviously, for the United States. I think there's 70 million Catholics in our country. The biggest thing that you'd like to see the Pope accomplish on this trip, or what do you think his intention is to accomplish, is what?
So much in American, just our society is looked at in these left and right political spectrums. I would like for people to see what Pope Francis is saying outside of that and realize that this is a church of Jesus Christ. This is a church of mercy. It's a church with open arms, and not to twist everything into politics. I deal with the public policy matters of the church, but those are implications of these things that follow. But first and foremost, it's a gospel of love, and I think that's what I'd love people to see about Francis, and I think he personifies it.
Amen. I think he's doing an outstanding job in that arena. Christopher Dodson, again, he's the executive director for the North Dakota Catholic Conference. Enjoy your time, and what an incredible honor for you, and thank you for taking the time, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Look forward to talking to you soon. And when we come back, much more coming up here on 630 Point of View. Love to know your thoughts. Obviously, the Pope visiting the United States for the very first time. What would you like to see him accomplish on his trip? Go to our website, 630pov.com. We'll be right back.